Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Underdog episode. Today we got Season 4, Episode 4, Contrite. Jake is making a domino tower in the warehouse, carefully placing a domino at the top. No one else is at the warehouse, and all the beds are folded up in their cubbies. The console is shut off, and the moon is glowing through the grates on the roof of the warehouse. The faint sound of bugs croaking outside is interrupted when the door flings open. This doesn't bother Jake, as he's still trying to find the perfect place for the domino. Zara's walking inside and stops behind Jake, deciding not to topple the perfect tower. She leans in close, watching as Jake finally puts the last piece on top, and he zips around to Zara with a huge grin on his face. He looks at her a moment before gesturing to the dominoes and back to Zara. Zara laughs through her nose, smirking.
Do I have to spell it out for you?
Zara puts her hand out, then Jake places his unlocked phone in her hand. He poses in front of the dominoes, pointing at them with a smug expression. Zara goes to the camera app and positions the phone in the right position before snap. Zara hands the phone back to Jake, who scans the photo, smiling and nodding proudly. Jake stuffs the phone in his pocket.
Pretty neat, huh?
Zara smirks again before lifting her finger and twirling it, making the dominoes float and create a new tower, arguably more impressive than Jake's. Jake stares at it, annoyed, trying to hide his flare of amusement.
Yeah, that's great.
Zara spins her finger again, creating a deer made of dominoes. Jake rolls his eyes and pushes the dominoes, breaking them, scattering them everywhere on the floor. Jake crosses his arms and faces Zara, who's still smirking.
Hey, was it raining when you got here?
Zara gets taken back by the question, looking through the grates in the roof, noticing it's not raining. No. Why do you ask?
Never mind. I was just asking.
Jake huffs and walks past the table, kicking one of the dominoes on the floor. You're weird. Zara looks at the grate again, dry as a Sahara. It cuts to the robot body sitting on a table in the office building, slumped. Dylan is sitting on the table next to it, leaning back on the wall behind them. Dylan rubs his hands over his face, looking over to the robot. He takes a deep breath, his knee beginning to bounce up and down. He takes another deep breath, this time cutting to Dylan bashing the robot's head into the floor, pulling one of their arms off, sprawling wires everywhere. Dylan keeps bashing the head before it comes off and he launches it out the broken window, sending into the busy streets of nighttime New York. He's out of breath and slowly backs up from the ledge leading to the window. Dylan goes back to the robot, snapping off its other arm before slamming it over his head onto the floor, again and again, eventually breaking it in half, kicking it out the window, also dropping it to the ground. Dylan bends down on his knees, looking out the broken window, the armless robot lying behind him. Dylan takes a shaky, deep breath, his whole body nearly shaking. He glances at the body behind him, and it cuts to him sitting in front of it, legs out in front of him with his knees bent. Wires are spilling out of the severed limbs and neck of the robot. Dylan droops his head between his legs. The image of blood dripping flashes in Dylan's mind, the sounds of it hitting the metal ground of the Lotus base. He shakes his head, clearing the image. It cuts to Dylan rubbing the sides of his forehead, then his temple. It cuts to Dylan standing over the robot body, launching his fist into the chest of it, beginning to frantically pull out the wires inside of the torso. The torso is emptied, and he puts his face in the punch hole and screams into it, vibrating the body. It cuts to Dylan stomping on the chest, flattening it. Dylan pulls off a leg and tosses it into the corner of the room. The camera focuses on it, before going back to Dylan, who's stomping on the chest still. It cuts to him sitting on the edge of the broken window, the robot body only a flattened torso and one leg. He takes another deep breath. This time, he's finally done. It cuts to Misner zipping up a duffel bag, slinging it over his right shoulder. He turns around and it shows the rest of the room is filled with other serpents packing up items and closing bags and cases. Misner continues going through the room before being stopped by one of the serpents. Sir, we can't leave. Misner raises his chin slightly, staring at the serpent down. Why do you reckon that? The serpent shifts uncomfortably. Underdog's not dead. Misner smirks, still staring at the serpent. The serpent reaches into his pocket and pulls out the phone, showing it to Misner. Misner looks at the phone before slowly dragging his head back into the serpent. Thank you. for bringing this to my attention. Misner steps back from the serpent and lets his duffel bag drop to the floor. Serpents! Misner's voice rebounds against the wall, all the serpents snapping their head to him. We stay here. Underdog's not dead. Groans and sighs erupt through the room. It won't be like that for long. Misner turns from the serpent and goes to the radio receiver set up on the table. He flips some switches on the face of it, lighting up the green LED circles next to them. Then he twists a knob and grabs a silver microphone connected by a wire to the radio, beginning a transmission. He's alive. So let's go find him. He releases the button, and the scene cuts. It cuts to Jake standing outside the warehouse, wearing the beam glasses. The moon is still high in the sky, glowing. The glasses are slightly worn by the hinges. He reaches his hand up and cranks the dial to the right. The edges of the lenses of the glasses grow red. Jake takes a deep breath before the glasses finally heat fully, and he focuses on a tree in front of him. Squinting, a crackling beam of red exits the lens, but it immediately dies down and the glasses are smoking. Jake takes off the glasses and flips them to the front, looking at the smoking lenses, frowning. Miranda walks up behind him, peering at the glasses. They broke? Jake sighs, lowering the glasses and his arms to his side, turning to face Miranda.
They were worth their while.
Miranda flicks her eyes up to Jake. Can I get your opinion on something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Miranda takes a deep breath and begins to look nervous. Look, I figured that there was never really a good time to ever leave the team.
Whoa. You're leaving?
I'm just thinking about leaving.
You can't just leave.
Says who? There's no damn leadership around here anymore.
So you want Dylan back here?
Nobody knows what they want with Dylan. Jake squints at Miranda.
You can't leave. Not yet.
Yet? Jake snaps the beam glasses in half and tosses the two pieces into the grass, walking towards a warehouse. Miranda looks at the glasses and back at Jake before it cuts back to Dylan in the office building. He's still sitting at the edge of the window, the remnants of the robots still scattered in the room. One of Zara's portals form behind Dylan, and Zara walks out of it. Her face drops when she sees the body parts of the robot. What did you do? Dylan senses that Zara's appearance and he quickly stands up. Excuse me? Zara points at the disfigured torso, glaring at Dylan still. You throw a temper tantrum or something? Do you want a second Lotus? Zara goes up to Dylan, getting into space. So that's your excuse for this. Do I need an excuse for not wanting more of my friends to die? Zara brings her hand to the side of her head and rubs at the sides. Alan knows the body's missing. Dylan turns away from Zara, shaking his head. He's been bugging me about it. What am I supposed to tell him? Tell him you have no idea where it went. I think he can piece everything together, Dylan. Let me talk to him then. He's not an inmate. Go talk to him whenever you want. Bring him here. Why? So I can just be the mediator? Dylan puts his hands on his hips, tapping his foot. Zara exhales sharply and turns around before pulling out her wand and swirling open another portal. It cuts to an angle behind the portal with Zara standing in front of Dylan. Both have their arms crossed, waiting for Alan. Each second, each blink, feels like an eternity. Finally, Alan in plain clothes come walking out and looks at Zara, glancing at Dylan for a second before seeing the robot body making his eye twitch. Let me guess. This was a huge accident. Alan steps forward, the portal swirling shut. So what if it was? Alan grits his teeth. We decided to tear it apart because it's dangerous. Dangerous? That could have helped us. Alan steps closer now, his voice raising higher. I see no universe where some slumped, lifeless body could possibly help us. Zara snaps her head back to Dylan, glaring at him for a moment before looking back to Alan, who's standing pugnaciously. You say you both did it, but I got a feeling I know who really destroyed it. Dylan walks ahead of Zara, lightly shoving her out of the way, getting in Alan's face. Is that what you want to hear? That I broke the damn thing? Well, I did. Get over it. Dylan turns around and begins to walk away, but Alan grabs him by the wrist and yanks him back, throwing him against the wall behind him. Alan points at Zara, stopping his path towards Dylan, who's getting off the ground pissed. Stay out of this. Dylan gets up and rotates the wrist Alan yanked him by. Look at you, stooping to my level. Dylan stops rotating his wrist and goes towards Alan, who's also walking right at him. Dylan takes the first punch, but it's dodged by Alan, who grabs the back of Dylan's arm and slings him past him. Dylan, stunned by the throw, is quickly kicked in the back by Alan, running into one of the window's frames, barely missing the open window. Zara is watching timidly. Dylan pushes himself off the window frame and sees that Alan is about to reach him again. Seeing this, Dylan kicks Alan in the knee, knocking him to the ground on one knee. Dylan punches Alan's cheek, knocking his face to the side. Alan quickly recovers and starts to get up and tackles Dylan's lower body out of the open window, sending them toppling down. As Zara peels over the edge, the two boys continue to plummet. In the air, Alan is continuing to crawl up Dylan's body. "Bold move, tackling me out of the window." "You talk too much." Alan punches Dylan in the face as they get closer to the ground. Eventually, Dylan uses his gravity powers to stop their fall and propels them into an abandoned shipping building, sliding against the gray floor, separating off of each other. The building has no light peering in, except the hole that it just now created. Dylan begins to get off the ground slowly, but Alan is already up and standing in front of him with his arms crossed. Alan quickly flashes to the other side of the plain room, before flashing in front of Dylan. Dylan throws a punch, but his fist is grabbed by Alan and he twists his arm, making Dylan wince in pain. Alan then punches Dylan in the face, making him stumble backwards. Alan tries to speed at Dylan, but Dylan stops him using his gravity powers. Now, frozen in place, Alan is very slowly moving, his speed barely stronger than Dylan's powers. Dylan shakes his arms, and for the first time in a while, his right and left arms light on fire. He brings his blazing hands up to Alan's face, and punches Alan square in the face, letting go of the freeze, making the pink glow dissolve, and Alan fall onto his back. "You know, Alan, you could fix this. Reverse time, right? Consequences for everything," Alan says as he starts to recollect his thoughts. "Fine." Dylan steps backwards, the fire disappearing off his arms. Alan rolling on his stomach, trying to regain sense. "Let's forget our powers, so you can have a chance." Alan extends his arms, forcing his torso off the ground. Before he fully gets up, he spits, the saliva slightly red from blood. Alan gets to his feet, stumbling slightly. "Stop talking and fight me." Dylan laughs out his nose before reaching to his right, prying a pipe off the wall, arming it with two hands. Alan shakes his head at this, amused, arming his fist in front of his face. Dylan takes a step closer, the pipe still armed to his face. Dylan raises the pipe and swings it at Alan overhead. Alan shields his face with his arms, taking the impact, wincing. Dylan pulls the pipe back and swings it at Alan's side, but Alan grabs the pipe and yanks it forward along with Dylan, the pipe clanking on the ground. Face to face, Alan grabs the side of Dylan's head and slams it into the wall to the right of them. Dylan yelps in pain and puts his forearm into Alan's neck, pushing him against the wall behind him. Dylan begins punching Alan relentlessly as Alan tries to remove Dylan's arm off his neck. As the punches land, Alan's face gets bloodied, along with his eye getting teary and puffy. Dylan begins to get tired, his pace slowing as Alan begins to drag down the wall. Dylan pulls his fist away, blood from Alan's face splattered on it. Dylan steps back and starts to walk away. Alan looks up, his brows furrowed. You ain't gonna finish me?" Dylan stops, turn away from Alan, who's starting up the wall, wiping his blood off his cheek. Dylan turns around. "You can't back down after talking so much shit." Alan fully gets up and begins to vibrate his right hand. "But it's about time someone kills you." Dylan raises his arm laterally, exposing his chest. "Do it then." Alan steps forward, his hand still vibrating at high speeds. Alan grabs Dylan's shoulder with his non-vibrating hand before a loud crack sounds through the air. A bullet flies through Alan's ankle, making him fall to the ground, holding onto it. It cuts to a fleet of boots stomping on the ground. The camera pans up to Misner holding a pistol. He halts the serpents behind him and looks at Dylan, whose fists are clenched. "Heard someone glowed pink and flew into this building." Misner waves the pistol. "Y'all know anything about that?" Dylan reaches his hands out and fixes Alan's bullet wound with his powers. "Nah." Dylan then raises his arms and opens his palms, calling for the blades. They land into his hands. As Dylan locks eyes with Misner, bullets begin to fly through the air, but they suddenly stop. Alan paused time. Alan gets up and limps in front of Dylan, looking at him as he's in the motion of throwing as one of his blades is frozen midair, going towards the serpents. Alan looks back to the bullets and serpents before grabbing Dylan and speeding off. The bullets hit the wall and the serpents stop firing. The blade Dylan threw hits one of the serpents in the arm. Misner looks back at the serpent before he throws his pistol at the ground, it bouncing a few times. It cuts through the warehouse where Jake, Zara, and Miranda are standing around nervously. Alan and Dylan zip into the room, making everyone flinch up. They all notice the disheveled state of the two. "I thought one of you would kill the other." Dylan looks at Alan with anger. "Why'd you take me away?" The other three look with confusion, oblivious to the situation. Alan looks to them. These guys in army uniform and shit pulled up. They called themselves the Serpents. Of course you know them. Okay. Of course you know them. That why you wanted to kill all of them. What happened out there? Oh, you know. Dylan almost let me kill him, and then he wanted to slaughter every serpent that was there. Jake and Miranda both sigh. Alan. Dylan gets out from clenched teeth. Dylan. You need to leave. For good. Dylan looks at Zara immediately. What? We've been talking about it. And you have no good reason to stay. Everyone but Dylan nods in response. Dylan stands there stunned. I don't? Don't make me take you out myself. Dylan blinks a few times. He stares at Zara. How can you let him come in here? After what he did? Like he didn't even do it! Dylan gestures to Alan and Zara in a stun. Dylan sniffles before stumbling out of the warehouse. Outside, Dylan's eyes are teary as he walks into the grass. He falls to his knees in the soft grass and bends down, planting the top of his head into it. The camera flashes closer to Dylan before cutting to him kicking in the windows at the top of the office building, sending glass flying out. It cuts to him on the roof screaming at the top of his lungs. He falls to his knees again, looking into the night sky. Strangely, though, the moon is a slight shade of pink. Dylan squints at this, his face scrunching, before it cuts to black. Then, it cuts to the grave by the warehouse. The footprints are partly faded, and the dirt is unsettled. Not so calm anymore.